Good morning, MERCYhouse. Glad that you're with us again during Holy Week. My name is Tommy, and I'm going to be leading us through a short devotional to get us started on Good Friday this morning. So grab your Bibles, turn to Luke chapter 23. We're going to be in verses 1 through 16. I'm going to read it out loud for us. Starting in verse 1, Then the whole company of them arose and brought him before Pilate, and they began to accuse him, saying, "We found this man misleading our nation and forbidding us to give tribute to Caesar, and saying that he himself is Christ a king." And Pilate asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" And he answered him, "You have said so." Then Pilate said to the chief priests and the crowds, "I find no guilt in this man." But they were urgent, saying, "He stirs up the people, teaching throughout all Judea, from Galilee even to this place." When Pilate heard this, he asked whether this man was a Galilean. And when he learned that he belonged to Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him over to Herod, who was himself in Jerusalem at that time. When Herod saw Jesus, he was very glad, for he had long desired to see him, because he had heard about him, and he was hoping to see some sign done by him. So he questioned him at length, but he made no answer. The chief priests and the scribes stood by, vehemently accusing him, and Herod with his soldiers treated him with contempt and mocked him. Then, arraying him in splendid clothing, he sent him back to Pilate, and Herod and Pilate became friends with each other that very day, for before this they had been at enmity with one another. Pilate then called together the chief priests and the rulers and the people, and said to them, "You brought me this man as one who was misleading the people, and after examining him before you, behold, I did not find this man guilty of any of your charges against him. Neither did Herod, for he had sent him back to us. Look, nothing deserving death has been done by him. I will therefore punish and release him." So if you're following through in this narrative, you've been listening along to this video series, so what you're seeing in Luke's account of how things are going in this narrative is that they're getting darker and darker as we get closer and closer to the cross. There's a lot of things going on in this passage. I'm just going to point out a few of them for us to meditate on. So if it was up to just the chief priests and the rulers, they would just walk Jesus out to the back and execute him themselves. The problem is that Rome had taken over, and they don't have a legal means to do that, which is kind of ironic that they're kind of playing this system, using lies and manipulation to find a legal means to murdering Jesus. But that's just what's going on. They need to appeal to Pilate, who has the authority to condemn Jesus and have him executed. And so they take Jesus to Pilate, and they make their case. And Pilate holds a trial for Jesus and really doesn't find any reason to condemn him. Verse 4 says, "Then Pilate said to the chief priests and the crowds, 'I find no guilt in this man.'" And Pilate could have freed Jesus right then and there, but he doesn't. He has the power to do so. He has the authority. He even has the reasoning, namely that he doesn't find Jesus guilty, but he doesn't free him. And mostly this is because the religious leaders are pressing in on him. They're making a huge fuss about this. And so what does he do? When he finds out that Jesus is from Galilee, he ships him off to Herod, who has the jurisdiction, in this case, to determine Jesus' fate. So he just kind of pawns off the problem in hopes that Herod can deal with it for him. So he gets to Herod, who's actually excited to see him, but not in a good way. He's excited because he's heard of the celebrity status of Jesus. He's this guy. Jesus is this man who does miracles. He shows signs. He works magic. But Jesus really doesn't give him anything to be entertained by. And so Herod with his soldiers, this is verse 11, "And Herod with his soldiers treated him with contempt and mocked him. Then arraying him in splendid clothing, he sent him back to Pilate." So it's Pilate's problem again. Herod finds no guilt in Jesus. He also could have freed him. He could have freed him right then and there, but he doesn't. And then Jesus goes back to Pilate, and it seems like this is where the whole story could end. Verse 13, "Pilate then called together the chief priests and the rulers of the people, and he said to them, 'You brought me this man as one who is misleading the people, and after examining him before you, behold, I did not find this man guilty of any of your charges against him. Neither did Herod, for he sent him back to us. Look, nothing deserving death has been done by him. I will therefore punish and release him.'" So it could end right there. Unfortunately, it doesn't. But it really should. Jesus is tried in a criminal court twice by men who have sentenced other men to death plenty of times before this, and he's found innocent on two different occasions. I think one thing I hope that we can take away from this point of the narrative is that not only should the events that have led Jesus to the cross engage us emotionally and seeing how sad and how cruel it is, but we also need to see how these events are just incredibly unjust. You'll often hear that Jesus had to die, that it was the only way, which is true, but having to die and deserving to die are two very different things. And just because it was inevitable does not take away from the fact that Jesus and what he's going through is really the most horrific injustice that this world has ever seen or ever will see. Why? Because not only is Jesus innocent of these crimes that he's being tried for, he's innocent of all sin altogether. And this morning, I want to encourage you to reflect on and to meditate on the perfection that is in Jesus Christ. Yes, Jesus was human. As we're seeing this week, he's experiencing pain and stress. He's showing love and compassion. But Jesus is not just a really good stand-up guy. He doesn't have good that just outweighs his bad. He has no bad. He is perfect, sinless, spotless, worthy of complete and utter worship. And it's this perfect, spotless, sinless, worthy of worship man that woke up willingly this morning 2,000 years ago to face abuse, torture, and death for us. 2 Corinthians 5:21 says, "For our sake he made him to be sin who knew no sin, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God." Thanks for joining me this morning. Hope you have a great day.